Sometimes the biggest inconveniences are just a blessing in disguise. Hi there friends, I'm Fairy in Black, also known as Anna. I'm a fantasy artist and this channel is all dedicated to my art, as well as the occasional vlog and just super random video. I do typically watercolors, but I have been branching out into different medias, for example, digital art. In fact, this piece and the other Castlevania fan arts I've done is probably the first series that I committed to, which is completely digital. I did stained glass imitation before in my life. I did Attack on Titan and I did fan art of a character from Magic the Gathering, but that was done with watercolors, and I thought it would be interesting to try to do it digitally. So in this video, I'd like to talk a bit about the process, because in the video where I showed how I did sci-fi, I talked about Comic-Con, but I didn't exactly talk about this. And this is kind of a new medium on my channel if you have been before. So I thought I should probably talk a little bit about it, give it the stage it deserves. So what I said in the beginning, a blessing in disguise. Somewhere around June of this year, my laptop broke. Completely unexpected. And that honestly really upset me. Not because it's just, broken expensive electronic. It's not fun. I also need it for school, and it was pretty much brand new. Like, not exactly, it was a year old at that point, but it's still relatively new, and I was like really upset about it. Honestly, also because I broke my previous laptop. I spilled some water on it, and then my parents got me the new one. And I thought to myself, okay, that's it, I'm gonna keep this one for the next 10 years, because I'm so scared of breaking my electronics now. I have such a bad track record with laptops. And then suddenly, I don't know what I think I was looking at like job postings or something, and it just shut down and didn't charge, and like nothing worked, and I just panicked a little bit. And I was so lucky, because it was July and I didn't have school, so I didn't need a laptop urgently. At the same time, Jesus bloody Christ, what is going on here? Why do my laptops keep on breaking? I'm telling you this because it does become a bit important. So I was about to actually fly to my parents' place. They live in a different city, about 2 hours flight away from mine. And they told me, bring the laptop with you. We'll try to fix it. My dad is a computer guy. He's not like a computer technician by education or profession, but he knows his way around computers. So often when stuff breaks, I just call him and I ask him like, hey, what should I do? I always ask him for advice, and he's always very willing to give it to me. So thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. So I took the laptop with me, and it still didn't work. So we had no choice but to buy a new one. Now keep in mind, I'm so spoiled. I live on my parents' money, so I already feel really bad for having to live this way and being like a parasite. Though I don't have much of a choice because I'm a student, and like my only option is to drop out of school if I don't want to rely on my parents for like financials. But yeah, I felt really bad because like that is like $2,000 down the drain. And I was like, I hate this. But my dad pretty much gave me a budget, said like don't go above it. And I chose. This time I decided I wanted to try a tablet rather than a laptop, because a lot of people use them these days, a lot of students. I saw that people say they're very convenient. And also I wanted to try Procreate. So I'm like, okay, let's try an iPad. But an iPad is like selling your soul or a kidney. So I downgraded a bit, not too much, to a Microsoft Surface Pro. One of the newer ones, so it was a bit expensive. And I bet the debt I owe to my dad for everything he done for me is more than all the student loans I could have taken over the years. My God, I will dive at some point to my immense guilt when it comes to like relying on my parents. This is something I like actually discuss in my therapy sessions. I'll get to it someday, but not today. So yeah, I got a tablet. I thought, well, it's a tablet, technically not a laptop, so whatever curse it is that I am carrying with me might not work this time. And I was, from the very start, very get-go, super protective. Still very protective. This is my little baby. but here's where the blessing in disguise came. Drawing on this thing is so pleasant. Like, genuinely so much fun. It is so good. I wanted to have a pen display for quite a while, but these are expensive, and I didn't want to invest into one before I actually got comfortable more or less with digital art. And here I had no choice. I pretty much got myself a pen display. Because it is a tablet, I can't exactly do Photoshop on it with some crazy GPU demanding tools. But what I can do on it is stuff on Medibang. Do you know Medibang? It's a free software. It's free if you don't use the premium, which I don't. It's a Japanese software that is pretty much specifically designed for manga artists. It's really good. It's quite simple. It doesn't have all the crazy brushes that Photoshop has, or Procreate, or Clip Studio Paint. I probably could have gotten Clip Studio Paint on the tablet. I was thinking about it, but it took me so long to decide. They raised the price for it and decided it's a subscription now, and people are boycotting it. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Well, the decision was made for me. But I am quite satisfied with just having Medibang on it. After all, I do have my PC that has Photoshop and the GPU and all the cool, strong stuff for the difficult rendering. And I thought if I'm gonna draw on my tablet, it's probably gonna be sketches and small stuff, because that's the beauty of it. You can sketch wherever you are. So I just started playing around with Medibang. And here are a few things I learned about this software. It has really good pen stabilization. I don't know why, but the smoothing in Photoshop isn't nearly as good as the smoothing in Medibang. Probably because it is specifically designed for line art and line art heavy kind of artworks, and Photoshop, not really. Photoshop, after all, is for photo editing originally, but you can draw on there too if you want to. Medibang is specifically for drawing, so therefore some of its coding clearly is more designed for it. And doing line art on it is just, on that software, is significantly more pleasant, easier, looks smoother and nicer than on Photoshop. Which is why, with all of my Castlevania artworks, which I actually started while at my parents' place, I started the sketches and the ideas over there. With all of my Castlevania stuff, I did the line art on Medibang. I did just kind of the figure first, then I added the ornaments and the thick lines at the outside, the outline of the figure, and I started adding the small divisions to create the illusion of stained glass. And if you want to see the process, I do have all of the line art process videos on my Instagram, and I think I'm gonna start posting them on YouTube Shorts because it brings views. Another thing that I really loved about Medibang is its rulers, or at least that's how I can call them. I have no idea. But it basically just kind of gives you shapes, and you can snap your pen or whatever lines you're doing to the shapes. So you can make perfect circles, you have grids, you have perfect lines at a certain angle. Really helps with perspective. And that really helped me with making all the ornaments and all the stained glass effect in the artwork. I bet Photoshop has the exact same tools just hidden somewhere, but I haven't figured out that on Photoshop. And Medibang, it is very accessible. It is right there in front of your eyes. It is waiting to be used. If it is in Photoshop, it is much more hidden because, well, it is just not the function of Photoshop. But here's a bit of a downside of Medibang. Because it is a simple software that's very line art based, it doesn't have the cool transparent or cool effect brushes of Photoshop. And I wanted my artwork to have a bit of a texture because stained glass has texture. So for that, I basically did the line art on Medibang, exported it as a transparent PNG, then send it to my PC, and then opened it in Photoshop and colored it using the fancy textured brushes of Photoshop. When first exploring the concept, I thought that maybe I should use a lot of textures, different textures, maybe do gradients inside of the panels, maybe make it super interesting, super vibrant, because if you look at older stained glass, it is typically just one color each panel, but modern stained glass actually often has a bit of a texture, a bit of a pattern on the glass panels that add a lot of life to it. But in the end, I decided that I'm gonna stick to the texture of the watercolor brushes of Photoshop. It is interesting enough and engaging enough. And I already have like a lot of super tiny elements in this artwork. If I'm gonna add a texture to each one of them, I'll be working on them for the next 5 years. So for efficiency, for aesthetic, I decided to simplify it and just heavily rely on the watercolor texture. And what's cool about it is, while it does imitate watercolor, it has a bit of like the paper under look. It is still very obviously digital. Like you can't look at it and say it's watercolor. I'm sorry, Photoshop, Adobe, you tried so hard, but it's just not it. It's not it. They have their own charm. I'm not saying, oh, it's garbage. They have their own charm, but if you want things to look like watercolors, I swear to God, just learn how to use watercolors. That is just my personal opinion. Now, just to comment a little bit about the process. To color each panel, I basically just did a layer in Photoshop. I filled it with colors and then started erasing the edges. I know I probably could have used the lasso tool so I don't have to erase so much, but to be honest, it's not as easy to use as one might think. It's actually not that efficient, at least in this case, or maybe I'm just using it wrong, I don't know. But after trying for a little bit, I realized that it is significantly easier for me to just fill the whole area with color and then erase the edges. Once I put the basic colors down, I started doing variations. For example, the brighter green or darker green in some areas. To talk a little bit about the ornaments on the side, because I started from them, main reason is because I wasn't sure exactly what to do, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna do them and then decide if I want to change anything. This is typically my approach for any area of any drawing or any concept that I'm not confident in. I just start with it and kind of see where it goes. These are the only times when I actually trust the process. Everything else is pre-planned. As you probably, if you've been on this channel before, you know I am all about planning, all about sketching, all about doing like 5 different concepts for each artwork. But yeah, sometimes I really have to trust the process. So I started with the ornaments. I wasn't sure what I want for the background, and even the ornaments themselves, I struggled with coming up with a nice idea. The character I am drawing right now is Alucard, and I wasn't sure exactly what kind of elements fit him, because like Trevor has his like the morning star on the sides, and Sypha has fire and ice. I didn't know what to do with Alucard, so I thought, okay, red flowers, why not? At first it was kind of a basic gothic panel thing, then I thought, no, that's boring, I want the flowers. And to design these flowers, I actually referenced some Art Nouveau artworks to kind of look how the patterns are structured, and what to do. And from there, I just kind of improvised. I thought, okay, that's a cool line. Oh, that's a cool line too. Oh, I can do a leaf like that. Okay, well, what if I had another one here? And just really improvising, doing a bunch of random stuff until it just kind of worked. And that's how I did the ornaments on the side. With the character himself, the main panel, I started with a red background, and then I have Alucard with his black clothes and his blonde hair, and it really stands out with the dark red background. Pretty much doing the same approach, just coloring everything and then erasing the parts that I don't want to be red. And I did that for every single element. Every time I added a new color, I just did on a separate layer so I can erase confidently, and then I would merge them after. For example, the hair was a separate layer, and I did one layer for the base yellow, and then another for the shadows. I erased everything, and then I merged the shadows to the base. Did the same thing with highlights, and just slowly kind of built up the colors and the values and all the shades. This is pretty much a technique identical to what I do with watercolors, though in this case it is significantly more forgiving when it comes to mistakes. And also in watercolors I can't exactly erase, but I also have the same approach. I just like do a base color, typically the brighter one, and then slowly work up the vibrancy and the shades and the values and the contrast. I would say, especially digitally, this technique is super easy. It is not difficult at all, as long as, of course, you know how lights and shadows work. If you don't, well, you are it doesn't matter which medium you're on, it's gonna be difficult. But this digitally is quite easy, but it's very time consuming. It's a lot of the same thing, just coloring and erasing, then coloring again, then erasing, and then coloring again. A lot of that. Luckily for me though, I had some company because as you can see the chat on the side, I streamed it on Twitch. I stream my digital artworks, the process on it on Twitch whenever I work on them. I don't exactly have a set schedule. I would want to maybe at least dedicate one evening of my week consistently to stream, but I don't have this option right now because my work schedule is never set. Retail be like that. But yeah, I stream most of these processes on Twitch. I stream the Castlevania stuff, and currently while I'm recording I had another artwork streamed like last night. I actually finished it last night, and it's a good time. Come join me. I end up discussing stuff like linguistics and ranting about AI art. My chat is very weird sometimes because some of my friends are on there. But yeah, it's a good time, so come join me if you ever have the time. I do want to figure out if I can also stream on YouTube at the same time because I feel like most of my audience is here. I don't really have anybody on Twitch. But once I figure that one out, I will let you know. My goal mostly on Twitch is not necessarily to show off, but to learn myself. I'm quite new to digital art and I'm also self-taught. I learn mostly from tutorials online and from experimentation. I don't have like the traditional kind of teacher. And you might learn something too along with me. Okay, so to segue back to Alucard, I am pretty much about to finish most of the actual figure and most of the coloring. And once I'm done with that, I do something that is one of my favorite things to do in Photoshop. It is always the highlight of each artwork I do, which is playing with the curves. I love it. It is so much fun. The curves tool, it is amazing. I basically do, after I finish all of my basic coloring and some of the shading, I do a top filter at the top of all my layers, which is the curves tool, which allows me to play around a little bit with the brightness and the contrast, and also lets me play around a little bit with the colors. Like I can skew, for example, the shadows a bit more reddish and the highlights to the green, or play around with blue and yellow. Basically, it just lets me change the colors a little bit. And I like to experiment with that tool a lot because sometimes the result might be absolutely gorgeous. It will be very vibrant and nice and might have some colors in it that I just didn't think of while working. So yeah, the curves tool is super fun. And after I'm done with the curves tool, that is time to age my artwork. By that I mean it's time to add some textures and some blemishes and imperfections. And for that I use also the watercolor brushes, but also the special effects that have a lot of splatters. I lower the opacity so it's not super dense and just randomly add some blobs of color. They are almost like scattered little drops, look a little bit like dust or blemishes on the artwork, and it makes it look so much more alive, much more put together. I don't exactly work with the separate layers at this point. I just put it on everything, background included, ornaments included, all of it together. And it really puts everything together, gives it new life, and gives it a bit of a soul, makes it look aged, and it's just a very beautiful effect. I really like doing it. I do use the splatter brushes quite a lot in my profile picture and a lot of backgrounds. I absolutely love them. I think it gives a very interesting effect, and that's pretty much it. This is how I finished Alucard from Castlevania. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate your support and your time. If you want to follow my Instagram, I recommend you do so. This is where I post absolutely everything. This is where I keep you updated about my adventures. So it's linked down below in the description. I also recommend you subscribe if you want more art content, and give this video a like. Likes keep me motivated. If you want to support me even more, I have linked down below my Etsy shop where you can buy prints of this one as well. It is currently on my Etsy shop along with Sypha and Trevor. You can also check out my Patreon, to which I soon will add a new tier that is dedicated to art that will get me banned on other platforms. You know exactly what I mean. And now I shall depart. Stay happy and stay creative. Bye bye.